the sharp clink of metal against wood cut through the quiet of the spacious kitchen like a gunshot in a library. Alia Vance didn't flinch. She had grown accustomed to Marcus. Thorne's dramatic gestures. Over the past 6 months, the way he made every moment feel like the climax of a play he had written, directed, and starred in alone. Tonight was no different. Marcus stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light, wearing the charcoal gray suit she had chosen for him 2 Christmases ago, the one that made his shoulders look broader, his posture more commanding. He adjusted the knot of his silk tie with deliberate slowness, as if the mirror across the room were an audience waiting for his next line. "It all ends tomorrow," he said, not looking at her. His voice carried that familiar triumphant edge, the one he used when closing a big sale or convincing someone he was always right. "I hope you've packed your things. I'm not waiting around for you to box up your rags after court. The condo is mine. We discussed this." Alia sat at the kitchen island, cradling a cup of tea that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She took a slow sip anyway. At 32, she felt both ancient and newly awake, as if the past few years had been a long, exhausting dream she was finally emerging from. "We didn't discuss anything, Marcus," she replied quietly, her voice steady. "You talked, I listened. Those are 2 different things." He chuckled, that low, self-satisfied sound that once made her stomach flutter with pride and now only twisted it with disgust. He turned to face her fully, leaning against the counter with practiced nonchalance. The kitchen lights caught the sharp line of his fresh haircut, the perfect fade he got every 2 weeks without fail. 35 years old, gym 5 days a week, teeth whitened quarterly. He was the picture of curated success. "Alia, don't be stupid," he said, shaking his head with theatrical condescension. "I have a shark for a lawyer." "You have what? Some old man from a free legal clinic? Wherever you dug him up, I earned the money. I paid the mortgage. You sat at home for the last 2 years playing housewife. Your contribution to this condo is 0. The court will leave you with nothing." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. "I offered you $20,000 as a settlement. You refused. Now you won't even get that." He was lying. He lied so fluently, with such conviction, that sometimes Alia wondered if he believed his own fabrications. But she knew the truth. She had always known the numbers. She stayed silent. Marcus pushed off the counter, checking his reflection one last time in the dark glass of the microwave door. Crystal's waiting in the car, he tossed over his shoulder as he headed for the door. "We're going to celebrate early tomorrow, right after the hearing. We're moving in here, so clear out the walk-in closet." The door slammed behind him. The silence that followed was thick, almost physical. Alia set her cup down carefully. Her hands didn't shake. They hadn't shaken in months, not since that rainy Tuesday in November when everything changed. She looked around the kitchen slowly, taking in the details she had poured herself into over the years. The soft gray walls she had painted herself one weekend while Marcus was at the office, the custom linen, curtains she had ordered from a small boutique in Decatur, spending hours choosing the perfect shade of ivory, the solid oak table where they used to sit and talk about the future, children, travel, growing old together. Marcus thought he knew her completely. He saw her as quiet, predictable. Alia, the former junior accountant turned freelance, bookkeeper who preferred spreadsheets to parties, who baked peach cobbler from scratch and never raised her voice. He had forgotten, or perhaps never truly understood, that an accountant doesn't just count money. An accountant sees patterns. An accountant notices discrepancies. An accountant never forgets. And Alia had been watching. She stood and walked to the sink, rinsing her cup with deliberate care. The hot water steamed against her skin, grounding her. Tomorrow was the divorce hearing. Tomorrow, Marcus expected to walk away with everything. The condo in Buckhead, the savings, the life they had built. He expected her to leave with nothing but the clothes on her back and whatever scraps of dignity he hadn't already tried to strip away. He had no idea what was coming. 3 months ago, she had been a different woman. Still in love, or at least clinging to the idea of love. Still trusting, still believing that the late nights, the unexplained charges, the growing distance were just the price of his ambition. Then came the receipt. It had been an ordinary Tuesday, gray and drizzling. Marcus had texted that morning. "Buried at work. Big meeting with the CEO. Don't wait up." She remembered reading it while folding laundry. smiling faintly at how hard he worked for them. For their future, she had taken his best suit to the dry cleaners that afternoon, a small act of care she had performed countless times. Before dropping it off, she checked the pockets out of habit. He was always leaving flash drives, business cards, receipts. Once, she'd found a ticket stub from a concert he'd claimed to hate. That day, her fingers closed around a thick piece of paper folded into quarters in the inner breast pocket. She unfolded it in the laundry room, expecting another client dinner receipt. Instead, it was from Lele Kla, a high-end jewelry boutique downtown. Date yesterday. Time 2:37 p.m. Item: ladies' 18K gold bracelet with topaz stations. Total 5,000. Her knees buckled. She sat down hard on the ottoman. Yesterday at 2:37 p.m., Marcus had been buying a $5,000 bracelet while telling her he was in a meeting. Something inside her chest cracked open, not with tears, but with a cold, clear fury. She didn't call him. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him when he came home late, smelling of whiskey and someone else's perfume, muttering about a successful negotiation. Instead, she opened her laptop. Marcus had mentioned his new assistant once or twice in passing. Crystal Duza, young, sharp, makes great coffee. Aaliyah found her Instagram in less than 2 minutes, public account, 20,000 followers, carefully curated photos of brunches, rooftop bars, tropical vacations. The most recent post was from last night. A close-up of a manicured hand holding a glass of champagne inside a luxury car. On the wrist, a gold bracelet with topaz stones. Caption: Bay spoils me, best night of my life. Geotag: La Belle Étoile, the same restaurant where Marcus had proposed to her 5 years ago. Aaliyah stared at the screen until the image burned into her retinas. She didn't cry that night. She didn't sleep either. By morning, she had made a decision. She wouldn't leave quietly. She wouldn't let him win. She would take back everything he thought was his. For the next 3 months, she lived a double life. By day, she was the quiet, compliant wife, cooking his favorite meals, asking about his day, pretending not to notice the lipstick on his collar or the hotel charges on their joint card. By night, she became something else. She converted the small pantry off the hallway into a secret office. Armed with her laptop, a printer, and an iron will, she began digging. Marcus believed she had no access to his main accounts. He'd changed passwords, enabled two-factor authentication. He thought he was safe. He forgot about the shared family tablet in the kitchen drawer. He forgot that all cloud backups were linked to their joint Apple ID. He forgot that she knew him, his habits, his patterns, the way he reused old passwords with minor variations. She started with the condo. Marcus loved to boast, "I paid for this place." You have no claim. But Aaliyah remembered her grandmother's death 5 years ago. Nana Rose had left her $150,000, the exact amount of their down payment. Marcus had convinced her to transfer it to his account for convenience, so they could make one clean payment to the developer. Convenience. She pulled the old bank statements. There it was, clear as day. Inheritance deposit into her account. Transfer to Marcus's account the same day. Payment to the developer 1 hour later. Every link in the chain traceable. Notarized copies ordered. Then the monthly mortgage payments. She had always transferred money to Marcus on the 15th of each month, exactly the mortgage amount. From her personal savings, what remained of the inheritance, plus her freelance income. She'd done it to stroke his ego, to let him feel like the provider pressing the pay button. Every transfer had a memo line for mortgage payment. 3 years of flawless records. Her contribution wasn't zero. It was nearly everything. But the real discoveries came when she dug into his spending. His official salary was good, $150,000 a year. Comfortable but not lavish. Yet the expenses were extravagant. 5-star hotels, designer boutiques, private lounges, offshore betting sites. She found transactions to gambling platforms, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 at a time. Over 2 years, more than $100,000 lost. She found payments for flights and hotels on dates he claimed to be in Cleveland or Chicago. For work, but booked for 2. She found the jewelry purchases, the designer bags, the spa packages, all in sizes and styles that were decidedly not hers. And then she found the work emails. His password was still his birthday, plus their anniversary year. Pathetic. In the archived folders, she uncovered the truth. Fake invoices, Shell companies, kickbacks from suppliers. Marcus had been skimming for years, small enough to avoid detection, large enough to fund his double life. With Crystal's arrival, the amounts had grown bolder. Aliyah documented everything. Spreadsheets with color-coded tabs, screenshots time-stamped and notarized, printed bank statements in chronological order, a folder 3 inches thick by the end. This wasn't just evidence for a divorce. This was destruction. But she didn't want prison for him, not yet. She wanted justice. She wanted him to lose everything he valued. The condo, his reputation, his illusion of control. And she wanted it done legally, cleanly, irrefutably. Tomorrow, in court, he would get his show. Only this time he wouldn't be the star. He would be the fool. The rain that Tuesday in November came down in heavy sheets, drumming against the windows of the Buckhead condo like impatient fingers. Aliyah stood in the laundry room, Marcus's navy suit jacket draped over her arm, preparing to drop it at the dry cleaners on her way to the grocery store. It was a small routine she had kept for years. One of the quiet ways she showed care in a marriage that had, over time, become more performance than partnership. She slipped her hand into the inner breast pocket out of habit. Marcus was forever forgetting things. AirPods, business cards, loose change, receipts he needed for expense reports. She had rescued more than one important document from the dry cleaning bag over the years. Her fingers brushed against thick, high-quality paper, folded neatly into quarters. She pulled it out, expecting another client dinner receipt or a parking stub. Instead, the logo at the top stopped her cold. Lillet Claw, Atlanta's most exclusive jewelry boutique, the kind of place where appointments were required, and prices started in the 4 figures. Date, November 12th. Time, 14:37. Item, 18K yellow gold bracelet with 12 round-cut topaz stations. Custom collection. Total, including tax, $5,012.40. Payment method, debit card ending in 7741. Aliyah's breath caught in her throat. That card ending was their joint checking account, the one Marcus insisted on using for big purchases because it earned cash back. Yesterday at 2:37 p.m., Marcus had sent her a text. Stuck in back-to-back meetings with the CEO and the board. Might run late. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. He had even added a heart emoji. She lowered herself onto the velvet bench at the foot of their bed, the receipt trembling slightly in her hand. $5,000. 3 months of her freelance income. More than she had spent on herself in the last 2 years combined. Her first instinct was to call him, to demand an explanation, to scream, to cry. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the auditor in her, the part trained to pause, verify and document before reacting. Maybe it was the small, quiet voice that had been growing louder over the past year, whispering that things weren't adding up. Instead of reaching for her phone, she walked to the kitchen, opened her MacBook, and began typing. Crystal Duza. Marcus had mentioned the name casually over dinner a few months ago. New assistant started this week. Crystal, young, sharp, organized. Finally someone who can keep up with me. Aliyah had smiled then, said something about how nice it was he had help. Now she typed the name into Instagram. The profile loaded instantly. Public, 21.4K followers. Crystal Duza was 24, with long weave, flawless skin, and a feed full of rooftop bars, designer bags, and mirror selfies in luxury hotel bathrooms. Her bio read, "Living my best life, Atlanta, travel, fashion, blessed." Aliyah scrolled down slowly. The most recent post was from last night. A close-up photo. A woman's wrist resting on a white tablecloth, holding a flute of champagne. The gold bracelet with topaz stones gleamed under the restaurant's soft lighting. The manicure was fresh, nude pink with a subtle shimmer. Caption: "When Bae knows exactly how to make a girl feel special. Best night ever. Je otage, la belle étoile." Aliyah's heart stopped. La Belle. Étoile was the French restaurant where Marcus had proposed to her 5 years earlier. He had rented out the rooftop, arranged for a string quartet, gotten down on one knee under a canopy of fairy lights. It had been magical, perfect, and now he had taken someone else there. She zoomed in on the bracelet. It was unmistakable, the same design, the same spacing of the topaz stones. Her chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't stress or a midlife crisis. This was deliberate, systematic, expensive. While she clipped coupons, postponed hair appointments, and transferred money every month for the mortgage, so Marcus could feel like the provider. He was spending their future on another woman. She closed the laptop slowly. No tears came, not yet. Instead, a cold clarity settled over her, sharp and clean, like the first frost of winter. Marcus came home just after midnight. She heard the garage door rumble, the soft beep of the alarm being disarmed, the jangle of his keys hitting the bowl by the door. He moved quietly, trying not to wake her, she supposed. She lay in bed with her eyes open, listening as he brushed his teeth, changed into sweatpants, and slid under the covers beside her. He smelled like whiskey, cedar cologne, and something sweeter, vanilla and jasmine, another woman's perfume. He reached for her in the dark, murmuring her name sleepily. Aliyah pretended to be asleep. His hand settled on her hip for a moment, then withdrew when she didn't respond. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. She stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, Marcus kissed her forehead before leaving for work. "Big day today," he said cheerfully. "Might close that deal with the Midwest group." "Fingers crossed." "Good luck," she replied, her voice perfectly neutral. He didn't notice the change. He never did. That afternoon, Aliyah began. She started small. First, she made a new folder on her laptop desktop, Balance of Justice. Inside, she created tabs in an Excel workbook. Real estate. Marcus, official income. Marcus, other income. Personal expenses. Mistress expenses. Family expenses. Evidence log. Then she opened their shared banking app on the family iPad, the one Marcus rarely used anymore because he had upgraded to the newest model. He had changed the passwords on his phone apps, but not on the iPad. It was still logged in. She downloaded 2 years of transaction history. The numbers told a story more damning than any argument ever could. There were the monthly mortgage payments, debited from Marcus's account. Yes, but always preceded by a transfer from her savings account the day before. Same amount, same memo line she had written every time, mortgage contribution. There were the down payment records from 5 years ago, her inheritance. Transferred to his account, then immediately to the developer. There were the gambling transactions, offshore betting sites, DraftKings, Bet365, thousands at a time, over $100,000 gone in the last 2 years alone. There were hotel charges in cities he'd claimed to visit alone for work. Always double occupancy rates. There were boutique purchases, Saks, Neiman Marcus, Lillet Clas. Women's clothing, sizes 2 and 4, designer handbags. Shoes in size 7, 2 sizes smaller than Aliyah's feet. And then there were the flights, 2 tickets to Cabo San Lucas. Booked for dates he'd told her were a mandatory sales retreat in Cleveland. 2 tickets to Miami, 2 tickets to New York, all paid from the joint account, all during times he was working late. Aliyah worked methodically, late into the nights while Marcus slept or was out entertaining clients. She printed statements. She took screenshots. She visited a notary and had everything certified. She created timelines, charts, summaries. Every piece of evidence was labeled, dated, cross-referenced. By the end of the first month, the folder was an inch thick. But she needed more than evidence. She needed strategy. A friend from her old accounting firm, Keisha, had gone through a brutal divorce 2 years earlier. Over coffee one afternoon, carefully scheduled when Marcus was at the gym, Aliyah asked for her lawyer's name. "Mr. Sterling," Keisha said without hesitation. "Old school. Looks like your grandpa. But in court? He's a killer. Doesn't take many clients. Only the ones he believes in. Or the ones where the other side deserves to lose badly." Aliyah made the call the next day. The office was in a quiet midtown building, lined floor to ceiling with law books. It smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper. Mr. Sterling was exactly as described. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, plaid handkerchief in his breast pocket. He listened without interrupting as Aliyah laid out her story. Not with tears or drama, but with facts, dates, amounts. When she finished, she placed the thick folder on his desk. He spent nearly an hour reviewing it in silence, turning pages slowly, occasionally murmuring approval or making notes with a fountain pen. Finally, he looked up. "My dear," he said in a voice like dry leaves rustling, "most clients come to me with emotions." He cheated. He lied. Punish him. But the proof is thin. You, however, have brought me a complete case. This isn't just strong evidence. This is devastating. He tapped the section on the gambling losses. And this is dissipation of marital assets. clear as day. Then the kickback schemes. His eyebrows rose. You're an accountant? Auditor, actually, or was before I went freelance. He chuckled softly. A good accountant is worth 10 lawyers. You've done half my work for me. He leaned back. Do you want to destroy him completely? Because we could. Criminal charges are possible here. Fraud, tax evasion. Aaliyah thought for a long moment. No, she said finally. I don't want him in prison. Not unless he forces it. I want the condo, my condo. I want compensation for what he wasted. And I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything he thought he could take from me. Mr. Sterling nodded approvingly. Wise. Vengeance is sweet, but precision is sweeter. We'll play this carefully. We file a counterclaim, but we hold the evidence back until trial. Let him think you're defenseless. Let him grow arrogant. Then we strike. They spent the next month preparing. Mr. Sterling taught her how to sit in court. Back straight, hands folded, face neutral. No reactions, he warned. He'll try to provoke you. He may even bring her. Let him talk. Every word he says in arrogance will be used against him. Aaliyah practiced in the mirror. She practiced until her reflection showed nothing. No hurt, no anger, only calm certainty. By the time Marcus threw his keys on the table that final night before the hearing, bragging, threatening, gloating, she was ready. The trap was set. The evidence was airtight. And tomorrow, in courtroom number 4, the show would begin. Not his show. Hers. The morning of the divorce hearing dawned gray and heavy. The Atlanta sky pressed low with clouds that looked like wet cotton. A fine drizzle misted the streets, turning the asphalt into a dark mirror that reflected the traffic lights in fractured red and green. Aaliyah Vance woke at exactly 6 a.m., the alarm on her phone soft but insistent. She did not hit snooze. She had not needed an alarm to wake her in months. Sleep had become a shallow, cautious thing, but today she wanted ritual. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above the bed. This bed, this room, this condo, soon the court would decide whose they truly were. But in her heart the decision had already been made long ago, in bank statements and notarized transfers and sleepless nights. She rose, walked to the bathroom, and turned on the shower. The water came hot immediately, steam filling the marble space. She stepped under the spray and let it scald her skin. A deliberate contrast, hot, then ice cold, then hot again. The shock sharpened her senses, washed away the last remnants of anxiety. Today was not a day for fear. Today was a day for precision. When she stepped out, the mirror was fogged. She wiped a clear circle with her palm and looked at herself. 32 years old, box braids pulled back neatly, skin glowing from the steam, eyes clear, focused, unyielding. She dressed with care. No black. She refused to look like a mourner. No bright colors. She refused to look like she was celebrating. Instead, she chose a tailored navy sheath dress that skimmed her figure without clinging. Professional and understated. The color of authority. The color of calm. She added small gold hoop earrings, simple, elegant, and a thin gold chain that had belonged to Nana Rose. Minimal makeup. A touch of concealer under her eyes, mascara, a nude lipstick that made her look polished, not painted. She pulled her braids into a low, tight bun at the nape of her neck. Severe but strong. In the mirror, she saw a woman she was only now beginning to recognize. Not the quiet, accommodating wife Marcus had shaped, but the woman who had always been there beneath the surface. The auditor, the strategist, the survivor. She packed her bag carefully. The thick evidence folder, her ID, a legal pad, 2 black pens, her phone on silent. Nothing unnecessary. She paused in the walk-in. Closet, Marcus's demand to clear it out, echoing in her mind, and ran her fingers along the hanging clothes. Half were hers, half his. Soon, all of it would be hers alone. She left the apartment at 7:45 a.m., locking the door behind her with a soft click that felt final. Her Honda Civic waited in its assigned spot in the garage, reliable and paid off long before the marriage. Marcus had always mocked it. You need something sexier, babe. But today it felt like armor. She slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and pulled out into the wet morning. The drive to the Fulton County Courthouse took 25 minutes. Traffic was light for Atlanta. The rain kept people cautious. Aaliyah listened to a jazz playlist on low volume. John Coltrane, Miles Davis, music that required no emotional response, only presence. She arrived early as planned. The courthouse loomed on Central Avenue, a brutalist concrete building that looked more like a prison than a place of justice. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old paper, industrial cleaner, and vending machine coffee. Voices echoed in the marble corridors, lawyers arguing, clerks calling names, families whispering. Aaliyah took the elevator to the second floor. Mr. Sterling was already waiting outside. Courtroom 4, standing motionless beside a wooden bench like a statue carved from patience and experience. He wore a charcoal three-piece suit, his silver hair neatly combed, glasses perched on his nose. In his hand, he held the same leather briefcase he had carried to their first meeting. He smiled when he saw her, a small approving curve of the lips. "Good morning, Aaliyah. How is the mood?" "Fighting spirit," she said. "Even eager." "Excellent." He offered his arm in an old-fashioned gesture, and she took it. "Remember, not a word without my signal. Let him speak. Let him dig." They entered the courtroom together. It was smaller than she had imagined. Rows of hard wooden benches, faded carpet, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. The Georgia state flag and the American flag hung limply on poles behind the judge's bench. A handful of people sat scattered, a court reporter typing silently, a bailiff scrolling on his phone, 2 observers waiting for other cases. Marcus was already there. He stood near the plaintiff's table, adjusting his cufflinks, looking every inch the confident executive. Dark blue suit, Armani, she recognized, crisp white shirt, silk tie and a perfect Windsor knot. His shoes gleamed. He had gotten a fresh lineup yesterday. The edges were razor sharp, and beside him, clinging to his arm like a trophy, was Crystal Duza. She was dressed for a nightclub, not a courthouse, a tight red dress with a plunging neckline, skirt barely grazing mid-thigh, stiletto heels that clicked sharply on the floor. Her makeup was heavy, contoured cheeks, false lashes, bright red lipstick. The topaz bracelet glinted on her wrist, catching the light every time she moved. Crystal saw Aaliyah first, her lips curled into a slow, venomous smile, eyes raking over Aaliyah's conservative dress with clear disdain. Then she leaned closer to Marcus and whispered something that made him turn. When Marcus spotted Aaliyah, his face lit up with predatory triumph. He strode toward her, pulling Crystal along, stopping just close enough for his cologne, Acqua di Gio, the bottle she had gifted him 3 anniversaries ago, to reach her. "Well, well," he said loudly, ensuring the few people in the room could hear. "Came to surrender, or did you finally change your mind?" "Last chance, Aaliyah." He towered over her deliberately, using his height. "Today is the best day of my life," he continued, voice dripping with satisfaction. "I'm taking everything from you. The condo, the accounts, the car, everything. You realize you're nothing without me, just a gray mouse with a calculator. Who's going to want you now? 32, no career, no assets." Crystal giggled, covering her mouth with manicured fingers, the bracelet flashing again. "Marcus, don't be cruel," she said in a sing-song voice laced with poison. "Maybe leave her the old sofa. It doesn't match our new aesthetic anyway. We ordered that Italian bedroom set, white with gold accents, remember? Her mama's little apartment could use a hand-me-down." Marcus laughed, deep and genuine, savoring the moment. "Yeah, take the sofa. You'll need somewhere to sleep at your mom's. Actually, no. I'll sell it. On principle. You walk away with nothing. You'll be reconciling debits and credits until you're old and gray." Aaliyah met his gaze. She did not flinch. She did not speak. She did not even blink. She looked at him the way an auditor looks at a fraudulent ledger. With clinical detachment, seeing every lie, every discrepancy, every attempt to hide the truth. Marcus's smile faltered. He was used to tears, anger, pleading. He fed on emotional reactions. Silence unnerved him. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat softly. "Your confidence is admirable. Young man," he said in a quiet, gravelly voice that somehow carried through the room. "Save it for the judge. You'll need every ounce and your vocal cords to explain yourself very soon." Marcus shot the old lawyer a dismissive glare. "Ah, the knight in shining armor. Get ready to file appeals, Pops. Won't help. My lawyer knows the judge. They go way back." Mr. Sterling's eyes twinkled behind his glasses. "Connections are useful," he replied dryly. "But law and irrefutable evidence are better." Before Marcus could retort, the side door opened. The clerk stepped out. "Thorne versus Vance. All parties to the courtroom." The judge entered moments later, Judge Elena Hargrove, mid-50s, sharp-featured, hair pulled into a severe bun. She took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and banged the gavel once. The hearing began. Marcus's lawyer, Bradley Knox, a slick, 40-something man with a permanent, fake tan and a shark-like smile, stood first. He paced dramatically, hands gesturing. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. My client, Marcus Thorne, is a successful sales executive who has been the sole breadwinner. The marital residence, a $500,000 condo in Buckhead, was purchased and maintained exclusively through his income. His spouse, Aaliyah Vance, has not been employed full-time in years, contributing nothing financially. We ask for an 80-20 division of assets in favor of Mr. Thorne, or full award of the condo with minimal compensation." He sat, smug. Judge Hargrove turned to the defense table. "Counsel, your response?" Mr. Sterling rose slowly, deliberately. He adjusted his glasses, opened his briefcase, and removed the first stack of documents. "Your Honor," he began, voice resonant and calm, "we categorically reject the plaintiff's claims. Moreover, we assert that Mr. Thorne has deliberately misled this court in an attempt to misappropriate property that is unequivocally separate." Marcus snorted. Bradley rolled his eyes. Mr. Sterling continued unfazed. "First, the condo." He handed the bailiff a thick, notarized packet, Exhibit A. 5 years ago, Ms. Vance received a $150,000 inheritance from her late grandmother. That exact amount, down to the penny, was used as the down payment. Funds were briefly transferred to Mr. Thorne's account for convenience. But the source is indisputably separate property. He slid copies across to Bradley, who snatched them irritably. Judge Hargrove studied the documents, eyebrows lifting slightly. "Continue." "Second, mortgage payments. Another packet, color-coded charts, 3 years of bank statements. Every month, Ms. Vance transferred the precise mortgage amount from her personal savings, comprised of remaining inheritance and freelance earnings, to Mr. Thorne's account one day prior to payment. Each transfer bears the memo for mortgage. This pattern is unbroken." Marcus shifted in his seat, color draining from his face. Bradley began flipping pages frantically. Mr. Sterling's voice grew quieter, more dangerous. "Thus, the condo is overwhelmingly separate property. Mr. Thorne's contribution is negligible." Then he moved to the dissipation claims. Gambling losses, $100,000 documented. Extramarital expenditures, $75,000 on hotels. Jewelry, travel for a third party. And finally, the fraud. Shadow income, kickbacks, shell companies, all laid bare. By the time Mr. Sterling sat down, the courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's keys. Marcus was gray, sweating, hands trembling. Crystal had been barred from the courtroom itself, but Aaliyah could imagine her outside, scrolling Instagram, oblivious. Judge Hargrove removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Recess, 20 minutes. I will return with ruling." As the gavel fell, Marcus turned to Aaliyah. His eyes were wild. "What have you done?" he whispered hoarsely. She gathered her papers calmly. "No, Marcus," she said quietly. "You did this. I just brought the receipts." The 20-minute recess felt like an eternity, and no time at all. Aaliyah sat motionless at the defense table, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. Mr. Sterling reviewed a few pages in his notebook, occasionally murmuring approval at his own handwriting. Across the aisle, Marcus's lawyer, Bradley Knox, leaned in close to his client, whispering urgently, gesturing with sharp, frustrated motions. Marcus did not respond. He sat hunched forward, elbows on the table, forehead resting on his palms, sweat darkening the collar of his expensive shirt. The bailiff's voice cut through the tension. "All rise." Judge Hargrove re-entered, robes sweeping, face unreadable. She took her seat, adjusted a stack of papers, the same documents Mr. Sterling had presented, and banged the gavel once. "Be seated." The courtroom settled into a heavy silence. Judge Hargrove cleared her throat and began. "In the matter of Thorne versus Vance, this court has reviewed the pleadings, the evidence presented, and the arguments of counsel. The facts in this case are unusually clear, due in large part to the extraordinary documentation provided by the defendant." She paused, her gaze sweeping across both tables. "Regarding the marital residence, a 3-bedroom condominium, in Buckhead valued at approximately $500,000, the plaintiff has claimed sole financial responsibility for its purchase and maintenance. However, the evidence demonstrates conclusively that the down payment of $150,000 originated from an inheritance received by the defendant, Alia Vance, from her late grandmother. This inheritance is separate, non-marital property under Georgia law. Marcus's head snapped up. The court further finds that monthly mortgage payments were consistently funded by transfers from the defendant's personal accounts, traceable and documented without interruption for the entire term of the loan. The plaintiff's contributions are minimal and do not rise to a level that would entitle him to any equitable interest. She looked directly at Marcus. Therefore, the condominium is declared the sole and separate property of Alia Vance. It is not subject to division. The plaintiff's claim to the residence is denied in full. A soft gasp escaped Bradley. Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came. Judge Hargrove continued. As to other marital assets, the plaintiff sought division of savings accounts and personal property. These claims are also denied. The court finds no significant marital funds remaining in said accounts, due to documented dissipation by the plaintiff. She lifted the next section of the evidence packet, the one detailing gambling losses and extramarital expenditures. Over the past 2 years, the plaintiff diverted approximately $100,000 in marital funds to offshore gambling sites. An additional $75,000 was spent on travel, lodging, jewelry, and gifts for a third party, expenditures made without the knowledge or consent of the defendant. The judge's voice grew colder. Under Georgia's equitable distribution statute, willful dissipation of marital assets for non-marital purposes is grounds for compensation. The court finds the total proven dissipation to be $175,000. The defendant is awarded half of that amount, $87,500, to be paid by the plaintiff within 90 days. Marcus slumped forward again, as if the number had physically struck him. The motor vehicle purchased during the marriage, a 2023 BMW X5, remains with the plaintiff, along with sole responsibility for the outstanding loan balance. The defendant has not used the vehicle and made no contributions toward it. Finally, Judge Hargrove set the papers down. Additional personal property, the plaintiff is awarded the television and microwave purchased with joint funds during the marriage. All other furnishings, artwork, and household goods remain with the residents and thus with the defendant. She paused one last time. This court notes with disapproval the plaintiff's attempts to misrepresent his financial contributions and to conceal both personal and professional misconduct. While criminal matters are outside this court's jurisdiction, the evidence of potential fraud has been noted for any relevant authorities. The gavel fell. Divorce granted. Case closed. The sound echoed like a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. Mr. Sterling turned to Alia with a small, satisfied smile. Congratulations, my dear. Justice served, cold and precise, just as we planned. Alia exhaled slowly. She felt no urge to cheer or cry, only a deep, steady relief, like a weight finally lifted after years of carrying it alone. They gathered their papers and stood. Marcus remained seated for a long moment, staring at the table as if it might offer answers. When he finally rose, his legs seemed unsteady. Bradley muttered something about appeals and grounds, but his voice lacked conviction. He packed his briefcase quickly and left without looking back. Alia walked out on Mr. Sterling's arm, back straight, steps measured. In the corridor outside, Crystal was waiting. She had been scrolling on her phone, legs crossed, one stiletto dangling from her toe. When she saw Marcus emerge alone, pale and disheveled, she stood quickly. "Well," she demanded, voice sharp with impatience. "Why so long? I've got a reservation at the Capitol Grill. Tables only held till 2. Did we get the condo?" Marcus looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "We lost," he said flatly. "Everything." Crystal froze. "What do you mean, everything?" "The condo is hers. I owe her $87,500. The car stays with me, but I pay the loan. I have nothing." Her face shifted. Confusion, then calculation, then open disgust. "You owe 90 grand? She hissed, stepping back. "You promised me a new life, downtown condo, trips, diamonds. And now you're broke?" "Crystal." "No," she cut him off, voice rising. "I didn't sign up for this. I'm not about to struggle with some deadbeat who can't even win a divorce." Marcus reached for her arm. "We can figure it out." "You said you loved—" She jerked away. There is no we, Marcus. You're fired, broke, and about to be investigated. Enjoy your freedom. She turned on her heel, heels clacking sharply down the corridor until the sound faded completely. At that exact moment, Marcus's phone rang. The ringtone, upbeat, triumphant, was the one he'd set for his CEO, Mr. Henderson. He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. It rang again. He answered. Hello? Henderson's voice was quiet, arctic. Marcus, I just received an emailed dossier from your ex-wife. Wire transfers, fake contracts, kickback schemes. I spot-checked 2 deals. Everything matches. Marcus's throat worked soundlessly. Mr. Henderson, You're fired, effective immediately. Security has disabled your badge and accounts. Your belongings will be in a box at reception. The company car and phone are being reclaimed as we speak. A driver is waiting outside the courthouse. And Marcus? We're launching a full audit. If the shortfall is greater than what you can repay, we will refer this to the authorities. Do not come to the office, ever. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. Crystal was gone. His job was gone. His home, his savings, his future, gone. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold tile floor. Suit wrinkled, tie askew, $1,000 shoes scuffed. Aaliyah emerged from the courtroom then, walking calmly beside Mr. Sterling. She saw him there, crumpled, broken, alone. Their eyes met. Marcus looked up, face streaked with sweat and the beginnings of tears. Aaliyah, he croaked. How could you do this? You destroyed me. I have nowhere to go. No money for an Uber, nothing. She stopped a few feet away. Mr. Sterling paused respectfully beside her. Aaliyah looked down at the man who had once been her husband. Her voice was quiet, steady, without malice. You wanted to take everything from me, Marcus. You stood in that hallway this morning and told me I was nothing. You brought your mistress here to humiliate me. You thought silence meant weakness. She adjusted the strap of her bag. You forgot what I do for a living. I balance books. I find discrepancies. I make the numbers tell the truth, no matter how ugly. She took one step closer. Everything has a cost. The bill always comes due. Today yours did. Marcus's voice cracked. Where do I go now? Aaliyah considered him for a long moment. You have your freedom, she said simply. The one thing you kept saying you wanted. No wife holding you back, no responsibilities. Just you and your choices. She turned to leave. And the car, she added over her shoulder. Sleep in it until the bank takes it. That's what you chose. She walked away. The courthouse doors opened onto a world washed clean by rain. The clouds had parted while they were inside, and bright January sunlight poured through, warming the wet pavement. Steam rose in delicate curls from the street. Aaliyah paused on the top step, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. The air smelled of rain, asphalt, and possibility. Mr. Sterling stopped beside her. Well done, colleague, he said warmly. That was a masterclass in preparation and restraint. If you ever tire of numbers, I'd hire you tomorrow. She laughed, light, genuine, unburdened. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, but I think I'll stick with accounting. Numbers don't lie. They don't cheat. They don't leave. He shook her hand firmly and descended the steps toward his waiting car. Aaliyah stayed a moment longer, watching people move through the sunlight, lawyers hurrying to their next cases, families emerging relieved or devastated, strangers beginning new chapters. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. The condo was hers. The debt was his. The future was hers. She closed the app, slipped the phone into her bag, and walked down the steps toward her Honda. Tonight, she would buy a bottle of good wine, something chilled and crisp. Maybe a small chocolate cake from the bakery on Peachtree. She would sit at her oak table, in her kitchen, in her home, and enjoy the silence. No lies, no betrayal, no performance, just peace. Behind her, in the dim corridor of the courthouse, Marcus remained on the floor. People passed him without a second glance. An hour ago, he had been certain he was untouchable. Now, the final balance sheet of his life was in red, total, irreversible, undeniable. Life, like the strictest auditor, had reviewed the books, and Marcus Thorne was bankrupt.